to bless you, Lord. The theme of my praise is to bless you all of the rest of my days. The theme of my praise is to bless you. The theme of my praise is to bless you, Lord. The theme of my praise is to bless you all of the rest of my days. In 1,000 ways I will bless you all of my days. In 1,000 ways I will give you blessing and praise.
Hi, in this series, Reverend Dr. Nixon De Vera will be reading his book, Constructing Eschatology, Rethinking the Prophecy in Isaiah, to delve into who God is and what God is capable of, considering life in general, especially in your life. Questions like, to what extent God has foreordained things, specifically before and during the final day of judgment. The author thinks all that concerns God's majestic plan, that is, to accomplish God's purpose for humanity, is covered in its entirety. In short, God is highly active in foreordaining things, and whatever God foreordains shall be fulfilled in the end. There will be intermission songs in between readings, courtesy of the Haven of Rest Quartet. Let us now hear from Nixon.
Off to our topic about the graciousness of God amid suffering in relation to the twin knowledge there at the Garden of Eden. But one might contend, is it not true that the evil knowledge is the critical mass exploded into disproportional malevolence in the world? It is true, but not without meaning and purpose. The theological oscillation of suffering set up between destroying and building must be in light of the one fruit dual knowledge analogy. That is, evil knowledge is inseparable from good knowledge. The disproportional evil is not in actuality as such if it is viewed against good. As the evil explodes, it goes with it the bursting of goodness across the globe. Logically speaking, it cannot be presupposed, too, that such bursting overshadows evil due to the one fruit dual knowledge. What can be presumed is the abundance of grace of the Messiah over the horrendous evils in world reality. Therefore the Lord longs to be gracious to you, and therefore he waits on high to have compassion on you. For the Lord is a God of justice. How blessed are all those who long for him. Isaiah 30:18. God's benevolence is shown in his justice. It is in humanity's disruptive change that the disruptive grace of God takes place. In Jesus Christ, therefore, the life-ruining potential of suffering is turned into a life-restoring agent. The conventional take on the evil of suffering is reconfigured given the sacrifice of God. In this regard, I stand with Robin Parry when he construes, quote, "It is not enough to show the horrendous evils experienced by some can bring benefits to the world as a whole or certain other individuals in it. It is hard to think how God could be said to love a person he allows to be irreparably harmed for the good of some third party." Unquote. It is nonsensical to claim that God wills the eating of the fruit of knowledge simply for humans to achieve perfection without the defeat of evil and the end of suffering. God supervises human affairs by managing individual lives. It is through this spectrum where God, argues Parry, is said to be loving all. As the reader will see, God indeed loves all by sustaining all, like a teacher and a physician. In reforming humans, God acted as the teacher, and in regenerating humans, God acted as the physician. This articulation coheres with Origen's notion of medicus animarum nostrarum, the physician of our souls. When the teacher aims to instill a lesson, gracious, he sometimes employs a rod, abstruse. Likewise, when the physician aims to heal, gracious, He sometimes prescribes very unpleasant and bitter medicine, abstruse. However, I still keep a safe distance from Origen due to his tendency for eccentric theology. He tends to allegorize biblical accounts, making them esoteric in substance and tacit in spirit. I am not rejecting the high contemplativeness of the divine approach to things. I reject that only the spiritually advanced enjoy the lesson or the medicine. The universal and equal dispensation of grace is the logical corollary of the doctrine of God as rendered here. There is neither bias nor prejudice in foreordination. The one who had been antecedently foreordained is Jesus Christ. He, in a sense, foreshadows God's embrace of all peoples. It is also true that some of Origen's thoughts, especially as the teacher and physician metaphor, anticipate the kind of theodicy expounded in the study. What is untrue is that neither Origen nor Irenaeus shaped the arguments here, but rather Karl Barth over the rigid employment of the covenantal motive to the discourse. Not so much with theodicy, but in the divine outworking in and through human beings. However, I admit that the Hickean, Irenaean, and Origenian formulations on human perfection are inextricably linked with what has been advanced thus far. These ideas append a discussion on the vitality and dynamism of the divine ways and means. The soul-perfecting theodicy does not sit well with other prominent theologians and philosophers. The argumentation is too close to making God as the author of evil. What is put forward hitherto is divine supervision, not divine puppetry in handling the problem of sin. If the doctrine of providence is situated inside the doctrine of God, the outcome is not problematic. When the subject, God, sustains the object, humankind, is developed, stabilized, and prospered, it is quite impossible to think the contrary. Whilst God is not the author of evil, he is the composer of the twin knowledge. The stereotyping of evil wholesale is a caveat in expositing the sovereignty of God. Clarity and coherence are non-negotiable in the ethos and pathos of theodicy. In considering the divine will with human accountability, the distinction between them is clarified and harmonized. Uncompromising acumen is basic in navigating through the seeming dead end just cited. It is punctuated in the subsequent argumentation. God knows exactly what occurs in human affairs because he is hands on it from beginning to end. Foreordination tells us that God is in full control of world affairs, macro and micro. He macromanages world events. He micromanages individual events in his way and by his means. To solidify the logic behind the impeccability of creation itself, the absence of glitch in the created system, we have to treat it in conjunction with providence. God's way is the reservoir of good, and God's means are necessary and beneficial. The former accentuates divine supervision in human choice, whilst the latter accentuates divine operation in nature. As the wonderful sustainer, God supervises our affairs and employment of our choices. This is observable in stirring up national activity by way of stirring up individual activities. This type of supervision validates that there is no supreme authority alongside God or besides God. But how does foreordination work given our participation? We can hold this tension in logical terms with the principle of compatibility. The principle of compatibility is the idea that whatever is humanly decided or acted coheres with God's intent. Without awareness, people decide in line with God's will. People act in fulfillment of God's purpose. For example, we vote on a candidate for a specific leadership position as if it is within our choice that the leader is in power. Yet, insofar as the Bible is concerned, God installs a prime minister or a president. God governs the vital circumstances, things that matter, within the non-static master plan in God's willing.
Day by day, by day, by day, day by day, and with each passing moment, by day, strength I find to meet my trials here, day by day, trusting in my Father's wise bestowment. By day, I've no cause for worry or for fear. Day by day, He whose heart is kind beyond all measure gives unto each day what He deems best. Lovingly, it's part of pain and pleasure. By day, mingling toil with peace and with rest. Day by day, by day, by day, by day, by day, by day. Help me then in every tribulation, by day, so to trust Thy promises, O Lord. Help me to trust in You, that I lose not faith's sweet consolation. By day, offered me within Thy holy word. Day by day, help me, Lord, when toil and trouble meeting, ere to take as from a Father's hand. One by one, by days, the moments fading, by day, till I reach the promised land. Day by day, 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 day by day.
Human freedom, amazingly, is included in this paradigm. Humans freely decide, humans freely act, regardless the outcome is still within the real-time willing of God. How? Scripture shows that it is God who fashions the heart. He moves every person from his heavenly throne. He directs each individual's trajectory. This has nothing to do with the Schopenhauerian conception of the will, an irrational force taking hold of people, since the overarching will is God's. We are to reconfigure our understanding of the master plan, for ordination includes human agency. To do this, we have to stop giving privilege to human choice. There is no such thing as naked freedom in and with humanity, so libertarian free will is philo-theologically inviable. To reappraise human freedom is to orientate oneself more towards favoring God's willing, a position to a great extent David Bentley Hart shares. He posits, quote, "Insofar as we are able freely to will anything at all, therefore it is because He, that is God, is making us to do so," unquote. This resonates with the ethical reflection engaged with the being in act of God. I acknowledge the impasse in the debate on God's will and human will, yet I suppose I can contribute to the ongoing conversation in light of Isaiah. For instance, Sennacherib meant to devastate Jerusalem, but God meant to correct this city. Sennacherib employed his army, position, and coercion to achieve his plan. Conversely, God applied his power, disposition, and patience to accomplish his will. The two are distinct paths with distinct teloses. but they are not separated. The method of God overturns what the Assyrian king had aimed for, and it did. The king succumbed to the will of the King of Kings. What Sennacherib had meant for evil, God meant for good. In the seizing of Jerusalem, this city had learned to humble himself before God. It was Sennacherib's contempt that brought the Jews to fear and panic. Nevertheless, it was God's concern that brought the Jews to faith and peace. This shows how God accomplishes His will without violating the human will. The latter capitulates the former. We use currency, technology, and intelligence, whereas God uses economy, circumstances, and prescience. In other words, humans utilize things they can control, whereas God utilizes everything. For example, weather, pandemic, microbes, angels, and others to his disposal. However, how it works daily is quite difficult to figure out. The impossible to the beneficiary is possible to the benefactor. This proves that God's ways is indeed deep and wide, akin to a reservoir, and it also gives way to the wonderfulness of divine counsel and the greatness of divine wisdom. It is within this mindset where the foundation of Israel is to be reviewed. In it, explains Barth, the foundation is, quote, God's free mercy, unquote. But such mercy does not connote easy or transparency, but instead disturbance and unintelligibility, because Barth continues, quote, the stone who is God becomes for it, Israel, an occasion of stumbling block and offense. Israel is necessarily destroyed by its sure salvation, unquote. Unless God clarifies the strange approach to human beings, theological contentions keep resurfacing. The truth is, God did clarify His outworking in Jesus of Nazareth. The problem is, more often than not, dissenters look elsewhere. A hypothesis can never be wrong or insufficient if it is situated Christocentrically. Jesus Christ is not only of Nazareth, confined as to the location or its culture, rather, Jesus has cosmic relevance as the Messiah. On a macro level, God makes nations great and God destroys great nations. He is very hands on in national affairs and international affairs. In Isaiah, Assyria, an imperial power, had been demolished, and Sennacherib, an emperor, had been deposed. Moreover, Judah, an insignificant kingdom, had been spared, and Zedekiah, an ordinary king, had been preserved. Time and again, the trustworthiness of God is underpinned. In being the great sustainer, God provides through nature also. God uses the natural law to govern within the created reality. It is His pleasure to work with nature, hence to use, but not exclusively, natural means. In the divine providence, God wills to operate through natural incidents. Let us reconsider the healing of Hezekiah to cement the point. The prophet Isaiah instructed Hezekiah to put mashed figs on his open sore. Case in point, God could have miraculously healed Hezekiah by instructing the prophet to touch him or by some other extraordinary channel or technique. Rather, God used natural means to heal Hezekiah. The question thus emerges, why was the slaughter of Sennacherib's army not done through natural means? I propose the answer is located in divine essentiality, absolute autonomy. As God dictates the course of life itself, God's means cannot be strictly confined to natural means only. On a micro level, God is fully hands-on in individual affairs. What is conceived as personal in our standpoint does not invalidate divine involvement. What is personal is also the Lord's business. Of course, since coordination includes our agency, this means to say that God does not manipulate the details. God brings about things in a manner beyond our mortal mind, yet still concordant to His character. Thus, there are no straightforward explanations. What is substantive in the discussion is the outcome. God has the final say in our endeavors. One might curiously inquire, how is it so? I think the how question is a non question in this reflection. What is relevant is to ask why. The rationale behind this is axiomatic in the human susceptibility to error and repeated mistakes.
I need thee every hour, most gracious Lord. No tender voice like thine can peace afford. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. I need thee every hour. Stay thou nearby. Temptations lose their power when thou art nigh. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. My Savior. I come to thee. I come to
Divine supervision and human accountability. Adam and Eve conspicuously foreshadow the human race. The Isaianic narratives showcase that there is no confidence in humanity. The non-aseity proposition, of course, does not attenuate the couple's culpability, and it is true as well to all human beings. What should be unattenuated is the role of ordination in this regard. It must be displayed within the boundary of the hands-on model. True confidence is in God, and God is where it is rooted. It is in the temple where people can be confident in God's grace. In the temple, people are far from getting lost, and movable humans are. Yet it is in the humanness where God provides the most, in Jesus Christ. Indeed, God is truly gracious to all. More importantly, God wills to see that His grace is for all. In effect of grace in decolonization, Israel will no longer be ashamed and disgraced. In dispensing divine grace, the no, which are calamity, disaster, and misfortune, serves the yes, development, stability, prosperity. Given divine providence, crucially it behooves us in this study to stress that we remain accountable for our behaviors. Although I hold to the idea of the primordial ordering of actions and events, I also advance the notion of divine actuality that frames the gravity and urgency of prayer. God sustains humanity in the eternal now. To emphasize this does not give room for human diversion from divine master plan, albeit humans still will stand in the trial in the eschatological judgment. In such complexity, Proto-Isaiah grants the reader, and that's you the non-negotiable, the fortitude out of aseity of the sustainer. The fact remains, God made the Assyrians powerful. God made this army powerless. The rise of the Babylonian kingdom is contingent on God. Likewise, its fall. What foreordination is not is God's being in view of humankind's act, generally speaking. Foreordination is about God's act, specifically in the person of the Messiah alone. There is simply a gap between being God and being human. Thus, there is also a disconnect between divine act and human act. For instance, the Messiah's leadership contrasting with Hezekiah's leadership. However, such disconnect is not to be taken simplistically. In the gracious providence, there is no hindrance in the sustenance of people. In the treatment of the provision grace, it has been established that the Lord's method of discipline is not a sort that should breed suspicion, but instead appreciation. It makes true sense that the source of life is also the sustainer. The idea of the sustainer is always married to that of the foreordaining God. The act in the latter is the prelude for the act in the former. Moreover, the result of the former is predetermined in the latter. It is within this conception that the hands-on model of foreordination or foreknowledge is fortified. In the incredible assemblage of materials for the doctrine of God, the anomalies in conceiving the divine ways and means are addressed. But I admit the issues inherent in the subject matter, vis-a-vis theodicy, are not entirely resolved. We know very little of what is beneath the tip of the eschatological iceberg. What is ascertained is the overtaking of our deficiency by divine methodology. The problem adding confusion to the discourse on theodicy is the supposition that in sustaining Israel, God neglects Israel's enemies. It has to be spot on. God prospers Israel as well as other nations, in fact, all nations. He blessed the Israelites, likewise, he blessed the non-Israelites. God is determined to reconcile all people to himself. God takes care of desolate land to make it into farmland. God will never be arbitrary. He is always equitable in conducting his ways and dispensing his means. The fairness in fulfilling the decree tells about God's character. This gives way to the impartiality of the eternal covenant as it affirms the integrity of God in it and conforms the legitimacy of human beings within the covenant. As God is truly faithful to his foreordination, God is truly faithful to his self-determination to and for us. With this acumen, one would not think that the Spirit departs from the damned in the end. After all, in the eschatological landscape, the recipient of divine mercy received divine indignation and is reinstated. The recipient of the latter will then receive the former and be restored. This highlights that divine power is truly unbounded and versatile. There is still a lingering question regarding the foreordination of a specific group of people. Why is it that only Israel is considered elect? This concern somehow challenges the universality of the Lord's treatment of humanity. We will address it as we enter into Isaiah.
Thanks for joining us and wish you could be with us next time in our series on Constructing Eschatology, Rethinking the Prophecy in Isaiah. Until then,
I cast all my cares upon you. I lay all of my burdens down at your feet. And anytime that I don't know just what to do, I will cast all my cares upon you. And anytime that I don't know just what